What is Parkython? It is a hackathon for Parkinson's, helping people with Parkinson's to customize and build their own solutions by connecting with creatives, designers, and makers, as well as startups, researchers, and others building the next generation of technologies for Parkinson's. Welcome to Parkython.
Today's guests are Benoit and Kevin Donnelly of NeuroPath. NeuroPath is building a far-reaching digital health platform for people living with Parkinson's, taking advantage of emerging innovations including markerless motion capture and voice as an interface to deliver a comprehensive experience that captures relevant details of daily life with Parkinson's. This information can be used immediately by people living with Parkinson's and shared with their healthcare team and others. Originally founded in the EU, the company has made inroads in the US with affiliations at Rush University, the Veterans Administration, and recently an interesting partnership with the Davis-Finney Foundation for Parkinson's. Join us for an interesting conversation between NeuroPath and the Parkython team, including Rui Quoto, Kevin Kreshe, and me, John Dean.
NeuroPath is a digital health platform that helps people suffering from neurological diseases, consolidates data for remote monitoring, and provides therapy. Let's take Parkinson's disease, the fastest growing neurodegenerative disease, estimated to double in the next 20 years, as an example. The lack of touch points in between the patient's consultations creates delays in adapting the care path, affects the quality of life, and increases health costs unnecessarily. NeuroPath creates meaningful touch points along the care path to intervene faster, lower costs, and to create a more personalized care path to improve quality of life and outcomes. Here's how. Patients get daily alerts on their smartphone to confirm medication intake. By answering easy and direct questions, we can measure the patient's quality of life. While doing prescribed exercises at home, our markerless motion capture software analyzes the patient's movements. Voice therapy measures, among others, the loudness and pitch while the patient exercises their voice. The cognition module provides simple exercises and cognitive assessment of the patient. When the patient is walking, symptoms such as freezing or shuffling can immediately be reported on the smartwatch. Nutrition reporting lets the patient upload pictures of their food in the app. All this data will be analyzed by artificial intelligence, creating insights, detecting specific events, measuring disease progression, and monitoring treatment efficacy. This will enable the clinical team to intervene faster and to create a more personalized care path for the patient. In addition to the patient and care provider, these data insights will be beneficial for researchers, pharma, and device companies. Now, let's make an impact together.
NeuroPath is a digital health platform that's solving a very specific problem, initially focusing on people with Parkinson's. There's really been little progress made on this condition since the 60s. And what happens is that typically patients will see their neurologist 2 to 3 times a year. And so much of that visit in many cases is involved in medication analysis and things of that nature. But importantly, in that 2 to 3 times a year, it's really a point in time when in fact there's 363 other days of life, and there's various aspects and data that could be collected as to how the patient's quality of life is being impacted. And so by not having access to that data, there's points where we don't have the ability to take interactions in care paths and improve outcomes. And so consequently, we believe that if there's no data, there's really no cure for this disease. So what we've set out to build is this digital health platform to really be able to deal with the fact that we've got this multi-symptom disease that it has a shortage of clinicians in many cases to be able to be seen on a regular basis. So at its core, it is a digital health platform. And you'll see here that we've got an example of our screen where the healthcare practitioners interface with our platform. Now, there's a number of components to the platform, and very importantly is our user interface. And this is an app, and the app is available via the App Store, whether that be Apple or whether it be Google. And this is the basic way for you, as a person with Parkinson's or as a caregiver, or as another companion, to be able to interface with our system. And we'll get into the actual details of how some of this works, and we'll actually see a demo on the app in a second. The second area is around device application program interfaces, or APIs. And so we're really leveraging a lot of the capabilities that the internet can really provide today, and all the great technology that's out there. And so when we think about devices, we think about things like the Apple Watch that you saw in our video, but there's also sleep monitoring tools and rings and activity trackers and things of that nature. It's not our intent to build those devices. It's our intent to interface with those devices and to be able to pull that data along with the user reported data into our digital health platform. The third area are partner APIs. And so not only are there a lot of devices out there, but there's also a lot of partners that have built tremendous capabilities around applications and around collection of data. And so again, as you saw in the video, it could be applications such as nutrition that would be recording data about food intake. And of course, these sorts of things are important as far as certainly overall quality of life, but then also specifically to timing of taking medications and things of that nature. It could be things to help with cognition or meditation or those sorts of things as well. And then lastly, there's data APIs, or application program interfaces. And this gets to this notion that's talked about quite a bit in healthcare, which is interoperability, and the fact that our data as patients resides in a lot of different places. It could reside in electronic health records that we see our physicians and other clinicians capturing when we interface with them. It could be insurance information. It could be research information. And so again, we build these application program interfaces so that our platform can pull all that data in about the person with Parkinson's life, and then really be able to pull that together to be able to draw insights. Now, at the core of this platform, there's really 4 different things that are going on. It's this patient and caregiver data that we're pulling in, and this is very much focused on quality of life. And so our mission is really to improve quality of life for people with Parkinson's, but also how that actually impacts their caregivers, and then also more broadly their care team. So how can we also not only improve quality of life, but also provide data and important capabilities to be able to interface back with people with Parkinson's. The second area is around use of advanced analytics and data. And so much great strides and improvements have been made on our ability to be able to capture data, but then also to be able to analyze that data, to use tools like machine learning and artificial intelligence to be able to improve outcomes and to be able to intervene more quickly to improve quality. The third area is what we talk about is really around interdisciplinary intervention. And Parkinson's and really neurodegenerative diseases in general happen to be multi-symptomatic and could be as many as 40 or 50 different symptoms. And so consequently, and as you know, there's many different care team members that are involved in treatment. It could be neurologists, physical therapists, exercise physiologists, psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses. And so what those teams don't always have the ability to get together. Our platform is a way to really be able to capture all that data and to be able to pull that together and then to give access to those clinicians who you say, and who a person with Parkinson's say need to have access to that data. The fourth component is really a big data component, and that's really to pull together what's called real world evidence. And so from that standpoint, it's how can we lower costs? How can we improve efficacy or outcomes for patients by utilization of this data. This data is not just important for patient care, but it's also important for device manufacturers in areas such as DBS, or for pharmaceutical companies in developing new drugs or improving the drugs that are currently out there on the market. So there's really a lot of interested parties in being able to use real world evidence. Again, always de-identified so that it doesn't relate to a specific patient, but that collectively, when you pull this data together, it can help ultimately where we want to go, which is not only improve quality of life, but ultimately get to a cure for Parkinson's. Now, I want to run another demo here, and this gets into the actual user interface, and this is the Navigator app that I talked about.
The NeuroPath Navigator app is available for Apple and Android devices and can be downloaded from the relevant app store. It is designed for people with Parkinson's and their companions to operate and provides a tailored user experience. After logging in, the main menu is used to navigate the available features. We can begin with the questionnaires. This one is based on NeuroQual. Every day, 5 to 8 questions on one specific topic can be answered by the person with Parkinson's and any companion. The answers given are saved in the NeuroPath cloud platform, where they can be analysed further. The medication feature allows a personal schedule of medication to be created and managed. At the planned time of intake, a notification is generated and the medication intake can be confirmed, changed, or rejected. The e-diary enables the user to create free-form notes that can be shared as desired. A status recording of on, off, or dyskinesia can also be included. The profile lets the user record relevant pieces of data, such as personal details and more specific information, depending upon their role. For example, a person with Parkinson's can record the year they received their diagnosis and if they have a family history of Parkinson's. The application settings let the user link companions if they are a person with Parkinson's, change the language used by the app, view the privacy policy and terms of use, and also log out.
So that's the main way that a person with Parkinson's or a caregiver, a companion is going to interface. And that, as you saw in the demo, it's not only that the person with Parkinson's can either enter data themselves, but they can also provide the capabilities for a companion to enter data on their behalf as well. But then also the companion can also enter data about kind of what their views are about, perhaps, you saw conversations or questions about sleep and things of that nature. In many cases, I may think that I had a sound night's sleep, but in other cases, in fact, it may have been tossing and turning and things of that nature that a companion would more readily be able to recognize. So those are, some of the capabilities that we've built into that application. There are a number of other tools, though, that are in play that I want to talk about just very briefly. Some of these have been developed by NeuroPath specifically, and so in addition to really those partners that we're interfacing with. So we talked about that app relative, the Navigator relative to input of information and filling out of the quality of life surveys. But then importantly, as we take a look at some of the symptoms where we see that there's great opportunities to be able to provide both biomarkers or indications of how the person is feeling, but also to provide therapy to be able to give improvement. Voice and coaching therapy is one of those areas that we're really working on and integrating other applications in working with partners to be able to integrate those applications in for voice therapy. Second area is around markerless motion capture. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this minute because I'm going to show a demo in a minute or so, but this is something that's really exciting around really capturing information around motor symptoms. And we think this has tremendous capabilities relative to the diagnosis or diagnostic side of things, from how the disease is progressing and how we can intervene. But also you'll see in the videos about how actually caregivers and providers can use this information. The third area is around cognitive games and tests. And so here we're providing both diagnostic capabilities, but then we're also providing games for actual coaching and therapy and things of that nature. We're working with the University of Padova in Italy, which is a center for Parkinson's. And then we're also working with the University of California at San Francisco, which is another center in the United States, really involved in neurodegenerative diseases, but specifically has got a great program relative to the use of gaming for improved outcomes. And then the fourth area is around medication. And so here we have a software that we actually own. It's called PD Watch for You. And I'll talk about this in a minute, that we're working with the University of Chicago really on perfecting this. And this is really around the dopamine release curves and really understanding how the patient is interacting with the drugs, and then ultimately trying to improve the therapy and capturing data to be able to provide initially to neurologists and pharmacologists, but ultimately this is something that could be provided directly to patients as well. So we'll talk about that in a minute as well. And then, but first I want to talk about the motion capture. And here you're going to see a demonstration of myself using the motion capture software with one of our partners in the neurointensive rehab space, and that's Movement Revolution. And so you'll see both myself, I'm recording myself, but then also our CEO, Benoit, is also recording me. So you'll see both of those demos here in a second. So there's my recording. And at the same time, I'm going to run Benoit's recording. And so here I'm doing a leg movement exercise. It's part of the movement, the UPDRS system. And you'll see that I'm making some changes between the two. And I'm going to show what happens here. And so once the video has been completed, this video gets uploaded and then is provided back to the, in this case, to my exercise physiologist. It could be a physical therapist. It could be a neurologist. And so this happens to be the data that Benoit recorded, which was on the right side of the screen. And so here you'll see that it was capturing data relative to my ankle height and my ankle speed. And that's got some other, specific information relative to movement frequencies and so on. And so while, in this case, I was recording in a studio, in other cases, this could have been recorded from the patient's home. And really provide that data to the platform to be viewed immediately, or it could be viewed together on a longitudinal basis. So this is the one that Benoit recorded, and this is the one that I recorded. And you'll see that I purposely made some changes in the way I was altering my speed and also altering my ankle height. And so rather than kind of having to eyeball that, we've captured that data with artificial intelligence. We've interpreted that data, and then we've also then provided these graphical capabilities. One of the areas I always like to talk about here, and I don't actually have the video of this, is really is raising from chair. And so in that movement, you'll see that some people will raise from chair and they may rock forward when they stand up. Well, to an exercise physiologist or neurologist or a physical therapist, that's an immediate trigger for them to be able to do some adjustments and exercises to be able to get postural stability, to be able to ensure that perhaps there isn't a fall that occurs down the road or something like that. I'm going to wrap up here in just a couple of more slides. We are a Belgian-based company, and so we've got a good amount of traction in Europe. And one of the areas that we're most excited about is with the Helsinki University Health System in Helsinki, Finland. And here we were selected by the European Union as part of a grant, and this grant is part of the smart hospital system in Europe. And so we've been selected to develop the Parkinson's care path and utilization of our software for treating patients initially in Finland, but then the notion is to really carry this throughout to other smart hospitals throughout the European Union. But I will also tell you that in the United States, for instance, some of our collaborative partners are very interested in what we're doing in Helsinki to really be able to share this data back and forth. But you'll see that we look at really the entire care path from self-management for the patient or for the companion in the home, through to follow-ups either remotely or in person, but then also being able to use predictive modeling data, as I talked about on things like my raising from chair example, to be able to drive better care enhancements and provide all that data to those multidisciplinary teams. And so we've received funding from both the European Commission, but also from the Belgian government for this project. Additionally, I mentioned the United States, and three partners I wanted to talk about in the United States briefly. Veterans Health Administration is the largest health system in the United States. We have an ongoing collaboration with the Veterans Health Administration to develop the platform for people, for veterans with Parkinson's. And there's about 1 million people in the United States with Parkinson's, about 110,000 are veterans of the US military. And so there we're developing a platform with input initially from 4 sites: Palo Alto, Orlando, Western North Carolina, and Western Colorado, with the intention of spreading this really throughout the entire VA. The second collaborative partner I want to talk about is University of Chicago Medicine, and this really gets around PD Watch for You. And so there we're working with the head of pharmacology informatics to really perfect that software and better understand how to be able to provide that information to pharmacologists, but also to neurologists, and then ultimately be able to spread that initially in their system, but then really be able to utilize that throughout our system as well. And then Davis Phinney Foundation, who many people are familiar with, largest patient advocacy organization for people with Parkinson's in the United States. Here we're a collaborative partner with Davis Phinney, and we're taking their book, which we really believe is kind of the, really the manual or handbook for people with Parkinson's, and that's Every Victory Counts. And we're digitizing that using artificial intelligence. And then we're going to integrate that into smart speaker technology, so that you could speak into our app or speak into a smart speaker, and then ask a question, and then that answer is going to come back from an actual response from Every Victory Counts. And so we're really excited about this project. We're only a couple of months into it, but I think it's the sort of capabilities that we can bring to improve quality of life, but also to be able to deal with how a patient or a companion really wants to interface with our platform. So that's our prepared comments, and would love to open it up to discussion now.
Yeah, and I would say, I think as a person with Parkinson's, it's this 363 days you're talking about that we're not visiting with our neurologist, and even in those days, it's a half hour if we're lucky. That's what really resonates with me. I think having the data to make sense of all the other fluctuations we go throughout our, from minute to minute and week to week and so on. I think it feels you really have a holistic view of things. You're connecting a lot of the pieces together. I was curious to hear more about, actually where you feel your real core strength is. And it seems to me just pulling it all together for one, because you're already, you're leveraging a lot of existing technologies. So maybe a little bit more about how you're, leveraging, what pieces of the puzzle, I guess, are you still missing, or do you feel you need to work on the most right now, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead and start off, and then I know Benoit will jump in. I think the real core strength is that the fact that there's over, as I talked about, 50 or so symptoms. And so, if you're using one device, let's say like a smartwatch, that's going to capture some things, but nowhere near enough
Right.
information. And then we know that all these different, symptoms interact, and we know that all these inputs like nutrition and things of that nature have important impact on how people actually can manage their quality of life. And so as such, I think being able to pull all that information together is critical. And then we basically bring a single pipe, if you will, then to provide that to the care team. And so in the case of Helsinki, they already have a digital health platform. So we're capturing all that data from patients and then providing that to their digital health platform. In the case of the Veterans Health Administration, we're capturing the data, but there we're going to provide it to through our platform. And as such, then in the case of Helsinki, those practitioners can design what their platform needs to look like. In the case of the VA, that's exactly what we're looking at, is designing that as well. And so we're not only, so I think we're not only capturing all the data together, But then we're also taking into mind the fact that we've got these, multiple clinicians, and we know that, to your point, Kevin, if you get a half an hour, that's a lot because of how busy they are. So how can we make this as user friendly for them so that they can get the information they need so that they can intervene back?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would add to that is from the start of this, of NeuroPath, we've been interviewing with patients, we've been running focus group with patients, and we really listen to what the patient's needs are before we even started developing. And the same goes, and it's a continuous process, of course, the same goes for the clinicians. As Kevin mentioned, and as you all know, neurologists are extremely busy. There's a structural shortage of neurologists. Not all people with Parkinson's have access to a neurologist even. And so the fact that we talk to them and see, okay, what you really need to see, like on a one page,
Right, exactly.
so
Yeah.
that you really focus on what is needed to focus on in the care path for that specific patient.
Right.
So it's a continuous process where we listen,
Yes.
we listen and then develop.
Very important. I think, I always feel there's a lot of companies out there looking at the patients and others looking at the clinicians and others looking at the pharma. I appreciate you listening to all the above. And even you mentioned like the DBS applications as well. I think, for that to really work, you need to have a 24/7 data and context that you're looking for.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
The other thing I would say is we walk the talk in the sense that we even have a person with Parkinson's and a DBS patient on our management team.
Right.
And so we're fortunate enough to have that interaction, not only because of the patient experience, but it happens to be that Koen, who's that patient, also has a background in software. So he can actually also from a technical perspective give us input, and that's very enriching.
That's great presentation. I mean, I have seen all the points that you presented here. I mean, I got almost all the points that I'm trying to search. I'm just wondering what in terms of improvement for the Parkinson's person, how much do you think in the future this will give to contribute for them? Because it's going to be, if you're going to use it in the US and in Europe, there's going to be a lot of data. How much this will be contribute in your vision to the, I mean, in maybe contribute to years of better way to better life, or what's your vision in the future for the contribution for Parkinson's people?
Benoit, you want to take that one first?
Sure. Now, obviously, the progression rate of the disease is extremely individual. So it really depends on the patient. And so we have a way to go on developing all the features on the solution, and collecting a lot of feedback from the patient, the care team, and the clinicians. This being said, some of these features can have pretty rapid effects. I'm thinking, for instance, about if the neurologist decides to change the medication, the patient could, normally you see results in like 2 or 3 weeks in the motor symptoms of patients. Now, that is currently not reported. So if we can just track the fact that there's a change in medication, collect the videos on the motor skills of the patient, and then collect the patient-reported outcomes on the non-motor symptoms, how this affects, that, that's a checks and balances already of the efficacy of that change in medication. And we've had patients that, moved from a frequency of 3 times a day to a frequency of 4 times a day, and were much better off. So those are the type of things that we could collect. Now, in the long run, of course, there's much more to it than that. As the degeneration of certain, capabilities of the patient wears off, some of them take months, years even. And frankly, again, I want to repeat, it's a very individual disease. Some patients move from the first stage, Herniar 1, to the 5th stage in like a very limited number of years. Others take 40 years and live with Parkinson's a very long time. But what we really want to do is make sure that whatever is needed in terms of interventions in the care path in a timely and objective manner is enabled by our technology, as opposed to just waiting for the next consultation. And so I'm sure Kevin can talk about it as well. We've done a study, a proprietary study in the US, as to how we could overcome adverse events. It's mind-boggling how many patients end up in the emergency room that should not be ending up in an emergency room, for instance.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that really briefly. The study was conducted by one of our advisors, Dave Stump, who was the chair of neurology at Northwestern University in Chicago. And so we evaluated the all payers claims database for the US. And the startling fact that we found from that was that 70% of the time when a person with Parkinson's presents at the emergency department, they end up getting admitted to the hospital. And so in the first place, I don't think anybody wants to go to the emergency department. In the second place, then certainly don't want to be admitted to the hospital. And so if we can detect events utilizing the data that could prevent an emergency department visit, then in this case, based upon David's data, 70% of the time, they're getting admitted to the hospital. That can have a tremendous impact on quality of life, and it can have a tremendous impact from the government's perspective relative to really the costs associated as well. And so we think that those are the sorts of capabilities that can be derived from this sort of data that really everybody wins in that solution.
I think you're hitting right on it. It's that the immediate benefit for someone living with Parkinson's, obviously understanding, having better vigilance of how their medications are affecting or what they're eating or their exercise. But if you prevent a fall in the United States, that's $50,000. That's a ER visit, having to get surgery. I'm talking about a fall with a fracture. I know you've alluded to Dr. Bloom's research in the past, but that's exactly how the Dutch got there, is they reduced falls with fractures of any kind, and especially the upper trochanter, the hip fractures. I think that's very valuable. I'm interested because of the real world data. I think you guys are, the brilliant part of what I see here is you're taking things that are already working. We know a fitness tracker works. You see things that are coming, like a machine vision for tracking diet. Now I don't have to type in a bunch of nonsense. But I think the real world data is really where I think you can make a change that hasn't come yet. That reason why we don't have a digitized UPDRS, or the reason why we don't have these things, I think we could, if you could tie it in with that data. Can you tell me more how that's coming? Because I know you got a big grant on that, and you really produced some interesting results.
Right. Yeah. And I'll go ahead and start on that. So the technology that we use is in the United States, for instance, and really is spreading throughout the world as well, is pretty much becoming government requirements. And that's on these APIs. And it's called Smart on Fire, or many times called FHIR. So it's a fast healthcare interface resource. And so basically it's the way, and the example I always like to use is when I want to take an airline trip somewhere, I can go to a website, I can plug in a couple of variables, and all of a sudden I see Delta, United, SAS, etc. It's that same sort of idea, how you can go out and grab data from all these different places and present it to a person. That's the API type of approach we're utilizing, but in our case, it's specific to healthcare. And so the ability to do that is really here today, to be able to capture that data from all those different places, as opposed to having to key that information in. So we're very excited about that. And in the United States, for instance, by the end of 2022, that'll be a requirement to have this sort of interoperability for all systems. And so everybody has to comply with that essentially. And so NeuroPath's already doing it. But additionally, a lot of these companies like Apple are doing it as well. And so that tech is out there right now. So I think that's I think that's really very exciting. The European Commission grant is really around the utilization of that technology, and then the utilization of the data that comes out of that, utilizing artificial intelligence, for instance. We've already on the motion capture, for instance, we've already got about 6 million images on the motion capture. So we've already trained our software. So when I was, when you saw my video on the motion capture, we had also worked at that point with 11 other patients that day. And so we captured their data, and that's what was used to really be able to train our system. So so we've already got a nice corpus of data that's already built, but then we're going to work with partners, academic partners and hospital partners, to be able to dig that out, to build that out further as well. And then Benoit, did you want to jump in further on the grants and the?
No, I think we're lucky to indeed have for a lot of our product development. We have a grant from the Walloon government in Belgium. And then the HUS project, I mean, the impact of that cannot be underestimated. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for us, given that we work with 16 different partners, but our role is really, as Kevin mentioned, to feed that digital care path for Parkinson patients. But what I like about HUS is not just about the artificial intelligence, because I like to call it augmented intelligence. It needs to be fed by the clinicians. And so it's not just one of these European projects where it's all a very nice intellectual effort. We're actually implementing it, and that's a nice thing about this project. We have started to talk about how to collect those data with the neurologist, how to use our motion capturing tools. So there's going to be a very pragmatic implementation of that, even before the end of the project and all the reporting we need to do on that project to get the money.
Great. When do you think the first version is coming out of the first features?
We are ready to launch the first version of the solution, sort of the full solution, with features on the profiles, the surveys on quality of life, the e-diary, and the motion capturing for a select number of exercises. So that is ready to go.
Very good. Does that mean that you're beta testing, or are you getting ready to have something where people can try it for you, or is this something where you're still testing with your partners?
No, we actually are at the point where we can start commercializing that.
Fantastic.
But we do it in a controlled way, because we want to, as I said, we want to use those opportunities to further train our models to make it, those features more robust, to make them more user-friendly, more relevant, based on the input we will receive. So we have a select number of what we call the beachheads, and all of them are, frankly, key opinion leaders in their field, whether it's a healthcare system, a hospital, or a patient association, or a physical therapy, neurointensive physiologist around Parkinson's.
I don't resist to ask regarding, since you say it's ready for marketing, you've talked about the dopamine release control. How advanced is that, and how is it working? Is it available in the first version?
It's so we're still in the I'd say in the development phase of that. So it's not available in the first version. And I think the first, and Benoit was talking about kind of controlled rollouts, I think the first rollout of that would probably be specifically at University of Chicago Medicine. And so, and that would be capturing the information, utilizing the smartwatch, and then feeding that information to the clinical team. So it would be to the primarily neurologist and then the pharmacologist. And I think this will be kind of interesting from and this is part of what UFC wants to study, is really that interface and that dynamic. I mean, we talk about neurologists being extremely busy, and what they're, in the limited amount of time that they do have with patients. If what we're thinking is, if we can include the pharmacologist in that is their bread and butter, if you will, is really that. Are really the drugs, and then really how those drugs, the efficacy of those drugs. But yeah, so I think, from a rollout perspective, I would say it'd be University of Chicago first to their clinicians. I believe that if we were to roll this out to patients, it would have to go through FDA approval and regulation, and same would be true in the European Union as well. And so there, I think we're probably, at least a year and a half down the road, there'd be clinical trials associated with that, to be able to roll out to, to where that data would actually be being fed to, directly to patients. So that's going to, I think that goes down a regulatory path.
Yeah, this being said, it's more than a beta version that we have. I mean, the patient inventor of that software has been using this for himself for the last 3 years. And so the results of that is that this patient has been able to cut down his medication by 40%. And at the same time has improved his UPDRS scores. So I know it's only one data point, but it's a very savvy patient. And those are actual results based on actual data that we have. So it's promising, but as Kevin explained, there's a regulatory and clinical trial path to follow.
I was curious to hear more about your business model too, in terms of, I think we were talking a little bit before we went live about, subsidizing wearables and things like that, and who pays for what, especially sometimes the patients are hesitant to go out and buy expensive wearables, for example, or kind of where do you feel where is driving things, and what kind of business models do you see evolving? For example, I was thinking like Rocksteady Boxing, that we're doing a lot of that, and it'd be nice to be able to have your motion markerless motion capture us, doing our moves and kind of giving us a score, kind of like a UPDRS score, but for our boxing, for example. And maybe that would be an entity that would to subscribe to your service, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and fortuitously, our partner that we're working with, Movement Revolution, is a Rocksteady
Okay.
site. So it's a great idea that I'm sure I think they'd be very, very interested in that. So as far as our business model, so there's really three components to the, really to this. We have reimbursement that would go directly back to clinicians.
Mm-hmm.
We have subscription fees for anybody using the app, or clinicians using our user interface for clinician interfaces. And then the third component of the business model is really around the data side of things. So essentially the way it works is, on the reimbursement side, today there are codes for remote patient monitoring, and as I mentioned before we came on, now there's new codes rolling out in 2022 in the United States for remote therapeutic monitoring. And the important distinction is, so your neurologists primarily are going to get reimbursed through those remote patient monitoring codes, whereas the broader clinical teams, like physical therapists, could get reimbursed through those remote therapeutic monitoring codes. So in essence, what ends up happening is, say 4 times a year, they get paid for the fact that they're evaluating your data relative to what they're capturing out of the NeuroPath system. So these codes are not specific to NeuroPath, but they're codes that have really grown dramatically because of COVID. Really over the last 2 years, that the government in the United States, but really other governments around the world, realized they need to expand those. In Europe, same idea, goes country by country as to what their programs look like. And we were talking about DIGA as the program in Germany, for instance. But it's the same idea, that those clinicians would get reimbursed for utilizing your data to provide better outcomes for you. On the subscription side of things, then we also charge subscriptions, and so our app is available via the App Store and via Google Play. And so from there, subscriptions would run anywhere based upon functionality from, say, $15 to $29 per month for the person with Parkinson's, and for any companions that they would want to set up. And then we have enterprise licenses, which are how we interface and how we interact with the health systems, like the Veterans Health Administration, or the individual practice, or a group practice, or something like that. And so that's where the location pays a subscription fee. But again, that location is going to be most likely those clinicians are going to be getting reimbursed by the government. Where we ultimately want to go, and the VA is probably the first place where we want to do this, is we want to get the healthcare system to pay for all of it. But that takes time to really be able to do that. But what we envision at the VA would be that the VA would provide our app, the platform to their clinicians, and that would be all paid for by the VA. So it wouldn't cost the veteran or the companion anything from a subscription standpoint. That'll be all done by the VA.
Right.
But that's yet to be determined.
Great.
I think that's the business model makes a lot of sense in that I think the big player and the big money or the really big value would be a large institutional healthcare provider taking this on, and they would get the most benefit. You know, if you could knock a certain amount of emergency admissions and then not to mention surgeries or something like that, you'd certainly make your case very quickly. I think it's
We'd
also
all benefit in the end on that one.
everyone wins, but the healthcare
Win-win.
system makes lots of money. I mean,
Yeah.
like $50 million. I forget what it was, crazy amount of money that they saved in the Netherlands for that. I think healthcare providers, for sure, we have money. I always feel like people living with Parkinson's is always the hardest one because I think they're already getting nickel and dimed. But maybe if you can establish the model there, get your data built in there, and then eventually go to the big players and say, hey, you know, quit nickel and diming these people, just pay us here. I think that's valuable for sure. And it gets to your augmented intelligence comment, Benoit, which I think is right on the money. Tell me that you're going to replace me with artificial intelligence, and as a clinician, I'm like, okay, see you, buddy. But tell me that you're going to give me better insight into what I already see. You know, I can hear somebody, I'm giving a test, I can hear word choices that maybe, I'm going to probe a little bit more on cognition. If you can give me something data-wise that can augment that, now I'm feeling like I have a superpower. Now I feel like Iron Man, right? Not a real superhero, but I have a superhero costume and I can put it on and it can make me better, right? Very interesting. I just want to keep respecting everyone's time. I know that you guys are coming in from here. I always like to close with the big question. How can we help you? What are you guys looking for right now? People with Parkinson's, people maybe who are accredited investors or know that milieu, hospital system. Who are you looking for and what can we do to help you?
Benoit, you can go ahead and start.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we continuously want to have brutal feedback from patients, caregivers, clinicians. So that's one thing how you could help us. Secondly, we're a startup still or close to getting a scale up now. So fundraising is a full-time job next to all the other jobs we do. So we've been fortunate, as I said, to get good grant money. But that grant money is tagged towards certain deliverables and does not necessarily come for free, as you have to spend that money first before getting it. So in terms of the fundraising, we're on the fundraising path. We have a fundraising strategy. We have people that are interested in funding us. So that will be a great help. We're currently closing a round where it's a final round of business angels. So if there's any business angels out there with an affinity for the solution and for the problems we solve, always welcome. And then the next phase, starting beginning of next year, is going to be to the professional, private equity and VC firms, for which we already have people that have committed certain amounts as a follower. And so the trick for us will be to find a lead investor with a network and with, where we can have synergies with. Basically, it's not just about the money, it's also about leveraging their capabilities,
Right.
their experience to move faster.
Very good.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would add to that is, and then partners, any partners, Davis Finney is a classic example. I mean, they're a wonderful partner, and you can see where, kind of bringing together, their organization and the capabilities they have around every victory counts and, over 550,000 members and so on, and then match that up with an organization like NeuroPath to be able to utilize our technology to augment intelligence for everyone. Those are the sorts of relationships that I think can be tremendous. And it's also what kind of feeds that data pipe, if you will, of pulling together all this information. So partners are just incredibly important to us in this sort of model. And so partners who are interested in working on this sort of collaboration, we'd love to talk to them.
Yeah, I think you guys bringing your expertise from Belgium, your experiences from Finland, your work in the UK, your work with the VA, you're bringing all, not to mention all the folks you have in Chicago. I mean, between the university and the therapy and everything like that, it's just like you're really, again, it's not new, but it's kind of new, but it's really bringing it together in a way that's going to actually be useful. And I think I like that on two reasons, on two counts. One is there's nothing out there that's like, oh, that'll never work, or we'll have to solve that engineering before we can do that. Like you're taking engineered solutions that we can use, and then two, by putting it in one place, someone with Parkinson's, I'm a clinician, healthcare system, we all see a reason why we want it to work. Kevin and Rui want to understand more about their condition. I want to understand more about when they need to come in to me and not wait until I hear from their doctor that it's time for another call or something like that, right? Okay, I'm bloviating, but it's right on the money, though, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you.
work.
Thank you.
Took the words out of my mouth, John.
I would like to talk one day with your friend that says reduce to 40%. So one of these days, how they do it, that would be great.
Yeah, but to get you to California, I think he's out in California. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something huge for him. I mean, that's a great thing.
No, he's an amazing person. He's an engineer at Lawrence Livermore Labs for about 25 years. Vietnam veteran, fighter pilot, and he's done amazing work. So yeah.
Actually, I've met Ray. I went and had a breakfast with him and his wife, and great conversation. And I was just thinking, wow, when I heard you mention his name again, I thought I gotta give him a call.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's just across the bay from me here in San Francisco. So
There you go.
Rui and I live in the wrong part of the world, is what we're saying. Yes. All right, folks. Thank you for your time. We will look forward to getting this ready and getting it out to the web.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
all right, thanks again. It's been fun.
Bye.
Good to see you again.
Take care.
All right,
care.
great to see you too. Bye.
All righty, bye.
We need your help. If you are a startup or know of one who can help collaborate to find solutions for people with Parkinson's, we would love to hear from you. We're all in it together. Thank you.